Hey everyone, I'm joined by Todd Lebo, CEO of Ascend2. He runs a marketing research firm that works with brands like Oracle, Dunn and Bradstreet, Marketo, and others. We regularly check in with Todd and see what kind of research that they're producing on which marketing trends are happening right now, what tactics are working, and more importantly, maybe which ones aren't. So Todd's always got some interesting findings from his research to share, and this one is special to me because it's actually my data that's being used on the project. In my role at Constant Contact, I'm always trying to understand more about my own customers and figure out better ways to drive pipeline and revenue. And in this research, we focused on attribution, specifically which channels get the credit versus what our customers are actually telling us. And since this is sort of born out of my own pet project, we're using my own data. So I think you're going to find it interesting. Let's get into it.
Thank you for inviting me on and sharing this data with me. Here at Ascend2, we've done hundreds of research studies around, marketing sales alignments, demand generation, nurturing, attribution, and I thought this data set that you are sharing with us or shared with me to analyze was really a good way to kind of address, some broader topics that I know our research has kind of found, and I think this supports.
Really, the marketing funnel is not as clean and clear as we would like it to be. And so we know that like intuitively as marketers, but we do use the funnel steps and we use the funnel stages in a way to be able to communicate with non-marketers how things are flowing through from leads to revenue. In the interest of trying to get things really simple in a funnel format, we've maybe missed telling how buyers are actually buying today.
It's probably been around for 100, it really has been around for 100 years.
As marketers, we know that no two buyer journeys are the same. But in order to communicate things that way, that's where the funnel is sort of, started with awareness and consideration, et cetera. It doesn't behave that way, as we know, right? We communicate it that way, but it doesn't happen that way. We talk about conversion rate steps and everything else. It really behaves more like this. Right? People are moving in and out of various stages and various places on the site, or awareness to consideration and back into awareness again. What we do is we try to pigeonhole them into this kind of view. And I think we need a better way to talk or tell the story to non-marketing executives how things are actually happening and unfolding.
There's a study that was done a couple of years ago by Google called The Messy Middle. And it really kind of shows, I think, what you see there below from the standpoint of on like a funnel, the starting point and the end point in between is, this messy middle of different ways people have engaged.
I talk to marketers every day that are leading marketing teams or digital marketing agencies that are serving teams and brands. They don't know how to talk about this super cleanly and super clear. So we're gonna sort of dive into that. But in order to do that, I kind of wanted to just take a step back and explore how I have been tackling this myself. I run demand gen for a team that is, the call to action is to get a demo or talk to a sales rep, like many people that are listening to this. And so there's obviously, there's traffic, there's, on-site, behavior and visitors that are coming to the site and they're checking us out. They're going to the buying page or pricing page, or maybe they're checking out a piece of content and they're making their way to the demo request page when they are ready to talk to a sales rep. And, and my real question underneath that was what was driving the person to come there in the first place?
What Eric and his team did was they asked customers how they had first heard about SharpSpring. So as compared to looking at their analytics, they went out and they asked, they actually included it in their form as well, so that the demo form, so that they could start gathering that information in real time as they move forward. But they went back and they asked these customers how they heard about it, and then compared that to what they were seeing in their analytics tool and what last click attribution was. And so you can see here the blue represents what the customer said, and the orange represented what the analytics was telling them, the last click. And so you can see that there's like this large disparity between most of these that are represented. And a couple things to point out was the one that had the most highest blue, which was what the customer said, this is how I heard about you, and this is, what got me started engaging with you, was referrals. But if you looked at the analytics, you would say that it was one of the least represented. It's a pretty shocking discovery, because our money and our time is typically, we follow the data, right? So since referrals and things that make referrals are not the things that our attribution model would show, we're not going to push the time, we're not going to push the money and resources to that, which is a big loss.
If you or a non-marketing executive looked at this data set and they looked at it and they said, hey, we want to do more of the things that are causing more of the sales, stands to reason. But underneath that, if you peel back that one layer and you say, okay, well, like we want to do more things that cause referrals. So what your natural tendency would be to do is, well, let's go out and create this referral program that allows people to refer others to our brand, and we can create brand affinity that way. Or we need to do more SEO, or we need to do, more search. The problem with that logic, if you don't follow it all the way through, you end up going down these false start paths. And if you're a marketer for any length of time, you sort of know, you've been through this exercise before. You also know sort of how dangerous that can be, where you think you're being data driven, but what's in reality happening is you're not sort of like overlaying what's actually going on with buyer behavior that's driving the outcome that you really want, which is closed won deals. You don't.
Here is the same data set that we saw before, but we, to I think provide a little bit more clarity, we put together some of the demand generation efforts, so like webinars and different things that would be more traditional demand gen, outbound search, and then referrals. So we kind of lump things together so we could see with more clarity. And, you see here just where, like, for example, search is, a little, very much probably overvalued from the standpoint of the attribution comparison. Not to say all of these don't have a place and a purpose, but as you look at it, just comparing what's happening from the customer's perspective and what they're telling us versus last click, it just starts to reveal, I think, and provide a marketer with a little bit more clarity on strategy, efforts, and things of that nature.
You want to ask the customer, why did they search for you in the first place, right? It wasn't because they went into Google and they typed in your brand if they don't know what your brand is. If you haven't already solved or addressed some of those particular pain points that person has that caused them to take the action to go into Google search bar and type it in. So Google gets the click, Google gets the credit, but in reality, what's happening is, something else drove that behavior. And so what's typically driving behavior is going to be things that are hard to track. As executives who are making budget decisions, that's always a sticky thing. As marketers, we want to be able to try to have clear attribution for basically everything so that we can report to our CFO or whomever that owns the budget and saying, like, this is our strategy for 2022, and here's the budget that we need to allocate in these channels. And what ends up happening is you end up struggling with tying more of the things that are driving real revenue, closed won deals, with, or sort of reconciling the things that are actually tying to closed won deals with the marketing activities that drive them. So by and large, my own campaigns are going to show in my attribution tool. It's going to show me, the things that are driving clicks and driving traffic that are connecting to the form fills that I get or the demo requests I get are going to be, direct type. It's going to be, SEO related, right? Organic search, from people doing the exact same thing, landing on a piece of content and coming to the site, or paid search branded terms, where they search for us in Google and then they find us. But nowhere hardly does paid social show up, and nowhere does word of mouth show up, obviously. All of that stuff shows up as direct SEO, paid search branded terms. And so if you look at my core attribution, and I did nothing else, I would say, okay, well, I want to do more of these three things. And I would do less of the other things, like have a podcast, create, conversations with people that are actually looking at referral programs, things like that. And, creating content, right, and promoting content in places like paid social, and that and the like. So this is always going to be a challenge when we talk to executives, because they want, and frankly, in a lot of ways, I think have been trained to think I need to be able to see where my dollar goes in and my $2 goes out, or comes out. And
how do you speak to the CFO with, and explain to them and, make your case, that this strategy that you have is the right way to go? Because a lot of times, like you said, they look at numbers and you don't want to present yourself as non-analytical or not having the data to support what you want to do.
I actually do it in probably 4 different ways. The first thing I did is I actually set them up and asked them themselves, how do you buy software? So it's funny. I actually had this conversation again with a different person in on a finance team, and she said, "Well, the last thing I bought was TurboTax, and in TurboTax, I already knew kind of it was what I wanted." And I was like, "Well, take the step back before that. How did you know it was the thing you wanted?" "Oh, well, because I was on LinkedIn and I was in G2 and I saw that it was rated really well. And then I was over here and I talked to a colleague in Slack, and they said, this is what we're using. So this is what we're going to continue to use." And she recommended it. Right. And I said, well, okay, that conversation and that process that you went through as a buyer is not unique to you. And so when you make it personal for the executive and you say, look, this is the challenge that everybody's facing, not just you, because this is how you do it. It's personal to them, it becomes real. And so when you get into the second bullet, which is, here's all the data that I've collected from talking to and interviewing customers and talking with our sales team and talking to our support team. And I've sort of codified it and show it in a way that gives a very clear picture of how our buyers are buying, right? And so where are they hearing about us, collectively, and getting them in a place where mentally the non-marketing executive is looking at it and saying, okay, this is actual data from people who are saying, in interview, or you're saying that are in interviews that they're telling you. And I find that very compelling when you present it, in a good way, very objective way, as this is just interview information that we're gathering. But it may not be enough, right? And so I take that third step, which is really sort of what hooks people, and that is talking about the zero-party data, gathering the information from customers who are actually telling us themselves, not what I pull out of it, of a conversation, but what they themselves are telling us. That is really powerful, right? They tell us themselves in a way in the point at which they are taking action on our website. This is where I heard about you, right? And it's just a simple form. It's open-ended. Don't close it. Like, don't make them drop downs or anything, because you want to keep it open-ended, because you want to hear what they have to say in the way that they want to word it or voice it or say it. And what they will tell you is they heard about you, that they heard about you from a podcast. They will tell you that they heard about you from, word of mouth or a referral. They will tell you that they heard about you from a colleague. They will tell you that they came from, a group or a, Facebook group or Slack channel. I think that is super powerful when you tie that feedback from the customer and tell the story the way that we just told it, where you say, this is what the customers are telling us. This is what our attribution software is showing us. There's a mismatch. What we really want is to affect more of this stuff over here that's causing people to come to us and dial those things up they're leading to more closed-won deals.
It goes back to, you do have data to back what you're doing. It's just a different type of data, right? Great marketers are curious, right? They're curious about why things work. And so they always ask that why question.
I would encourage anybody who's listening to this to say is, attribution is an incredibly useful, powerful tool, but it, in a lot of ways, I think should be used directionally as opposed to the single source of truth. And so when you talk to people, when you do this sort of process to be able to talk to, again, non-marketing executives who really don't understand the buyer behavior the way that you would as a marketer, this is what gives you that leverage, gives you that credibility to go and talk to the folks that might not see it, as clearly as you do on a daily basis. All they see is money going in and number of leads or number of deals coming out. And then the last thing that I would say, and this is just my own personal usage because I use SharpSpring as I'm a customer of SharpSpring as well as, working for SharpSpring. I use something we call the life of the lead a lot. We've talked a lot about how no two buyer journeys are the same. And I think, if you see from this, graphic over here to the right, that's sort of what's happening is every touch point that a buyer has across their buyer journey before they come in and fill out a form or request a demo, there are multiple interactions that they're having with your brand. Some of them are on your site. Some of them are in various platforms like paid social or elsewhere, right? Some of them are in conversations and Slack channels and everywhere else. What we're trying to do with the life of the lead is capture that timeline of what's happening from sort of ad impression all the way through to, a click to the site, to did they download a piece of content or just view a piece of content that you have, all the way to, did they come through and, fill out a form to get an ebook, or did they, interact with you on their chat or through chat with a sales rep. They didn't call anybody, but they're sort of doing their buyer due diligence, for your product or your service, and they have multiple touch points, right? They're seeing ads, they click through on a retargeting ad. You want to see all of that in a way that really captures the entire what we call the life of the lead, which is the interaction points across that buyer journey. And as we've talked about, there's, in this graphic that I'm showing you, there's never going to be another one that looks exactly like this one. They're always different. And what it's taught me is it's showed me a way to validate what I'm hearing from customers or what I think I'm hearing from customers. and it's showing me a way that actually people are interacting with my brand so that I can create marketing campaigns that really get buyers or potential buyers to do more of those things, right? And so that's what I'm after, is trying to get more insights and more behavioral data so that I can understand how to connect all of the dots in that messy middle, like you were saying earlier.
That's a great tool and really provides a lot of clarity that we need as marketers.
There's a lot of data that we sort of focus on. There's more to come.
Be on the lookout for those in the next month or two.
Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. And thanks for helping walk us all through it.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
All right.